A film of condensation captures my breath against the glass, obscuring the view of the archipelago below, just as the engines shift their tone. It is a deep, vibrating hum that seems to massage the very frame of the cabin, signaling that the descent is no longer a concept, but a physical reality. Through the small oval window, the world is a painting of slate gray and deep indigo, where the ocean meets the rugged coast in a handshake of white foam. The light here is different. It does not fall from above so much as it radiates from the horizon, a low, pearlescent glow that turns the afternoon into an eternal twilight. The cabin pressure equalizes with a soft pop in my ears. The heavy mechanical whine of the turbines begins to spool down, replaced by the rustle of fabric and the soft clicks of seatbelt buckles being released. I remain seated for a moment, letting the stillness settle over me. There is no rush. The aisle clears, leaving an open path of gray carpet that invites a slow, deliberate exit. My hand finds the handle of my carry-on bag. The grip is cool and solid. I lift it, feeling the familiar weight settle into my shoulder, a grounding sensation that anchors me to this new place. Moving down the aisle, the floor feels firm beneath my boots. I step across the threshold of the aircraft, crossing that small gap where the air changes instantly. It is cooler here, smelling faintly of aviation fuel and crisp, salt-laden wind. The jet bridge offers a hollow, metallic resonance underfoot. Each step sends a dull vibration through the floorboards, a rhythmic drumming that accompanies me toward the terminal. The ramp slopes gently upward. My breathing aligns with the pace of my stride. In for 2 steps, out for 2 steps. Entering the terminal building, the acoustic landscape shifts entirely. The hollow metal gives way to polished terrazzo, hard and unforgiving, yet pleasingly smooth. The wheels of my suitcase catch the change immediately. On the carpet, they had dragged with a muffled resistance, but here they sing. A low, continuous drone rises from the floor, a steady vibration that travels up the telescopic handle and into my palm. It is a hypnotic sound. The arrival hall is a cavern of glass and steel, echoing with the hushed murmur of other travelers. I do not look at faces. I watch the floor. The tiles are speckled with quartz, reflecting the overhead lights in blurry stars. I follow a line of gray grout, letting it guide me like a meridian. The walk is long and unhurried. There is a long corridor connecting the gates to the exit. Here, the floor changes again to a rubberized surface designed to dampen sound. The suitcase wheels fall silent, gliding with effortless ease. My boots make no sound now. It feels as though I am floating, drifting through the corridor with the weightlessness of a cloud. The rhythm of the walk takes over my mind. Step glide, step glide. There is nothing to think about, no decisions to make. There is only the forward motion, the gentle pull of gravity, and the rhythmic swing of my arm. The automatic doors at the far end of the hall sense my approach. They slide apart with a soft pneumatic hiss, revealing the true atmosphere of Ålesund. The air outside is startlingly fresh. It carries the scent of deep water and rain-washed stone. I move toward the waiting transport, a sleek bus that idles with a low, purring rumble. The ride into the town center is a visual meditation. We pass through tunnels carved deep into the rock, where the orange lights flicker past like counting beads. We emerge onto bridges that span the dark, glassy water of the fjords. The town reveals itself not all at once, but in layers. Art Nouveau facades rise from the water's edge, their pastel colors softened by the gray sky. Turrets and spires reach up, mimicries of the mountains that stand guard in the distance. I see a reflection of a yellow building in a canal, the image wavering slightly in the ripples, disjointed and dreamlike. The hotel lobby is small and quiet. A heavy carpet swallows the sound of my arrival. The key card creates a soft click, and I push open the door to my room. It is a sanctuary of pale wood and white linens. I leave the bag by the door. The window is cracked open just an inch, allowing the sound of the harbor to drift in the distant cry of a gull, the lap of water against a pier. I sit on the edge of the bed. The mattress is firm, the duvet thick and promising. I take off my boots, setting them aside with care. The floor is cool wood under my socks. I pull back the coverlet, revealing the pristine white sheet beneath. It is smooth, pulled tight, waiting. I lie down. The pillow cradles my head, cool and firm. The ceiling is a blank canvas, white and still. I close my eyes, and the motion of the travel, the plane, the walk, the bus, continues to rock me gently, a phantom rhythm that slowly fades. The sound of the water outside merges with the rhythm of my own breath. The day dissolves. The night is a soft blanket pulling up to my chin. The air in Ålesund carries a specific weight, a heavy, salt-laden coolness that presses gently against the skin. It smells of the deep fjord and cold stone. I button my coat to the chin, letting the collar stand against the slight breeze coming off the water. The street ahead, a Potgregata, curves gently to the right, disappearing behind a wall of pale yellow and gray facades. There is no rush here. The light is soft, diffused by a high, thin layer of cloud that turns the sky into a sheet of pearl. My boots make a dull, solid sound on the pavement. I pause before the building at number 9. The architecture here does not believe in straight lines. Everything bows and weaves, mimicking the shapes of stems and roots. I tilt my head back to find the first sub-goal of the afternoon. High up on the facade, clustered near the curved window frames, are the floral motifs characteristic of this place. They are painted a deep, burnt red, standing out against the pale plaster. I begin to count them, letting my eyes rest on each sculpted petal. 1. A single bloom near the left eave, its center tight and closed. 2. Just below it, a larger flower, open to the gray sky. 3. My gaze drifts to the right side of the window. 4. 5. They are like poppies preserved in masonry, a permanent garden blooming in the Nordic chill. I trace the green vines connecting them, thick ribbons of plaster that seem to grow directly out of the wall. 6. 7. The counting settles my mind, aligning my breathing with the visual rhythm of the red petals. Leaving the red flowers, I drift further down the street toward the heavy granite presence of the Swan Pharmacy. This building anchors the corner, a fortress of rough-hewn stone that feels as old as the mountains rising in the distance. The entrance is a cavern of shadow. I step closer, drawn to the texture of the rock. This is where the stone dragons live. I reach out, running a gloved hand over the cold, rough surface of the archway. The granite is coarse, biting slightly into the fabric of my glove. I trace the sinuous line carved into the side of the portal. It curves up, thick and muscular, terminating in the stylized head of a dragon. Its eye is wide and blank, staring eternally across the street. Lower down, near the foundation, the face of a troll emerges from the block, its expression caught in a silent, stone grimace. I follow the lines of its beard, carved in deep, swirling grooves that mimic the churning water of the fjord. The craftsmanship is heavy, substantial. It demands to be touched, to be acknowledged as something built to withstand the wind and the salt for centuries. Turning away from the heavy doors of the Jugendstilsenteret, I move toward the water. The town begins to quiet down as the afternoon deepens into early evening. Here, the rhythm of the walk takes over. I find the edge of the canal, where the walkway is wide and flat. The sensation of movement becomes the only thing that matters. My left foot strikes the ground, then my right. There is a soothing monotony to it. The sound of my steps is low and rhythmic, a steady percussion against the backdrop of silence. I do not look at the buildings anymore. I look at the gray path stretching out ahead. Step, step, step. The air feels cooler now, settling into the spaces between the buildings, filling the streets with a damp, fresh presence. I keep my hands deep in my pockets. The fabric of my coat brushes against my wrists with every stride. It is a long, straight path, and I allow my mind to empty of details. There are no carvings here, no colors to count, only the gray of the stone and the gray of the water beside me. I listen to the sound of my own breath, slow and even. In for 3 steps, out for 3 steps, the world narrows down to this simple cadence. The visual noise fades away, leaving only the sensation of gravity and momentum. I am just a moving point in the quiet evening, drifting forward without a destination, carried by the simple act of walking. The damp air touches my cheeks, cool and grounding. Step, step, step. The repetition is a soft blanket, wrapping around the senses, dampening the need to think, leaving only the need to be. Gradually, the rhythm slows. I come to a halt near the railing of the Brassendet Canal. The wind has dropped completely, leaving the air still and silent. Below me, the water has transformed. The restless chop of the afternoon is gone, replaced by a surface of absolute stillness. It is the dark liquid mirror I was looking for. The canal is a ribbon of black ink, thick and motionless. The buildings on the opposite bank are reflected perfectly in the depths, their turrets and spires duplicated upside down in the water. I lean on the railing, watching the reflection. The lights from the windows have turned on, casting squares of warm, buttery gold onto the black surface. They do not shimmer. They hang suspended in the dark water, solid and unmoving. The separation between the real building and the reflected building blurs, until it is difficult to tell where the stone ends and the water begins. A single white boat sits moored nearby, its hull doubling in the mirror, white on black, perfectly symmetrical. The scene holds its breath. There is no sound of traffic, no voices, only the immense, quiet weight of the water holding the image of the town. I watch a single yellow light deep in the reflection, waiting for a ripple that never comes. The world is paused, suspended in the dark glass of the canal, waiting for the night to fully descend. The morning air in Ålesund holds a fine, persistent mist. It is not quite rain, but a heavy dampness that clings to the wool of my coat and settles on my eyelashes. I step out onto the pavement, the ground dark and slick with moisture. The city is waking up slowly. There is no rush here, only the steady rhythm of water dripping from the eaves and the distant cry of a gull circling the harbor. I turn the corner into Kongens Gate. The street stretches out as a canyon of stone and glass, a gallery of the rebuilding that followed the devastation of 1904. The buildings do not stand apart, they shoulder together, a continuous wall of pastel yellow, seafoam green, and pale red. I am looking for a specific geometry, a disruption in the pattern. My pace slows. I scan the facades, reading the history written in plaster and granite. The architecture here is organic, full of curves and motifs drawn from nature. A stone garden blooming in the cold northern light. Then I see it. Number 10B. It is impossibly narrow. The facade is squeezed between its larger neighbors, a sliver of architecture that refuses to be ignored. It feels less like a building and more like a secret passage disguised as a home. My eyes trace the vertical lines upward, past the tight entryway, rising to the roofline. At the very top, the gable peaks sharply against the gray sky, an acute angle that pierces the low clouds. Below the roofline sits the oval window. It is framed in stone, shaped like a heavy-lidded eye watching the street below. The glass is dark, reflecting nothing but the shifting weather. There is a quiet dignity in its compression, a tall, thin breath held between the wider structures. I linger for a moment, memorizing the curve of the window frame before moving on. The street begins to curve, leading me away from the tight rows of houses and toward the open green space at the foot of the mountain. The transition to Biberken is soft. The sound of boots on cobblestone gives way to the crunch of wet gravel. The air feels different here, filtered through the needles of pines and the broad leaves of chestnut trees. The park sits at the base of Mount Axla, a resting place before the stone rises sharply upward. In the center of the path stands the quiet obelisk. It is a tall pillar of dark stone, erected in honor of Kaiser Wilhelm II. The history books speak of the fire that consumed the wooden city in a single night, and the ships that arrived from Germany carrying supplies to rebuild. But here, standing before the monument, the history is texture rather than text. I step closer to the stone base. The inscription is there, carved deep into the granite, but nature is slowly reclaiming the dedication. Patches of soft green moss have taken root in the grooves of the letters. The green velvet fills the loops of the German script, softening the hard edges of the carving. Rain streaks darken the stone, running in vertical lines like tears on a face that has stopped weeping long ago. It is a collaboration between the mason and the climate. I turn away from the path and find a wooden bench set back beneath the canopy of a large tree. The wood is cool and damp, but I settle onto it, letting the weight of the walk leave my legs. The world narrows to the space between the tree roots and the gravel path. A single leaf detaches from a high branch. It drifts down, rocking back and forth on the air currents. Left, right, left, right. It lands on the wet grass without a sound. The air is still here, sheltered by the rise of the land and the density of the foliage. I breathe in the scent of damp earth and pine needles. A bird shifts its weight on a branch above, sending a tiny shower of water droplets falling. They tap against the brim of my hat. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm is slow. My hands rest in my pockets, seeking warmth. The fabric of my coat feels heavy and comforting, a barrier against the chill. I watch the gravel path. The stones are shades of gray and white, speckled with rain. A small puddle reflects the underside of the leaves. The reflection shivers when the wind passes, then settles back into a perfect mirror. My breath creates a faint cloud that vanishes in seconds. In, out. The cold is not biting. It is a steady presence, like the stone of the mountain behind me. I close my eyes for a moment. The sound of the city is muffled, a distant hum that blends with the rustle of the leaves. There is no urgency in the movement of the air. It simply flows, wrapping around the trunks of the trees, cooling the ground, waiting. The bench holds me up. The ground holds the bench. Everything is rooted, heavy, and still. When I open my eyes, the light has shifted slightly, the gray sky brightening to a pearl white as the sun tries to press through the clouds. The moss on the obelisk glows with a sudden, vibrant intensity in the diffuse light. I do not move to leave. I remain still, watching the way the mist curls around the base of the mountain, letting the quiet of the park settle over me like a blanket that I am not yet ready to cast aside. The air at the base of the town park carries the scent of wet pine and salt. It is a crisp, grounding aroma that settles in the lungs, preparing the body for the ascent. Ahead, the white stone staircase weaves its way up the side of Mount Axla. A pale ribbon threaded through the dark green canopy of the trees. There is no rush here. The goal is not simply the top, but the rhythm of the journey itself, measured out in exactly 418 beats. I place a hand on the iron railing. It feels solid, cool to the touch, and anchors me to the path. My boot finds the center of the first step. 1, 2, 3. The climb begins with a slow, deliberate cadence. There is no sound but the scuff of rubber soles against the granite and the rustle of leaves overhead. The city noise fades into a distant hum, replaced by the immediate, steady metronome of movement. 4, 5, 6. My breath aligns with the motion. Inhale for 2 steps, exhale for 2. The air grows cooler as the elevation rises, brushing against my cheeks with a refreshing dampness. The trees here are tall and thin, their branches creating a fractured ceiling that lets quiet pools of afternoon light spill onto the stone. 7, 8, 9. Muscles warm to the task. The repetition becomes hypnotic, a singular focus that pushes away all other thoughts. There is only the step in front, the gray texture of the rock, and the sensation of lifting upward. 10, 11, 12. This is a long, unbroken chain of movement. The railing glides under my hand, a continuous guide. I do not look up to see how far remains, nor do I look back to see how far I have come. I simply exist in the counting, The rhythm is a pendulum, swinging steadily. Step, breath, step. The texture of the granite changes slightly, smoother in the center where thousands have walked before, rougher near the edges. 13, 14, 15. The wind begins to whisper through the pines, a soft, sibilant sound that rises and falls like a slow tide. It matches the rhythm of my pulse. I continue the ascent, the numbers rolling through my mind like polished stones. 50, 51, 52. The world narrows down to the immediate square of stone beneath my feet. There is no past, no future, only the present motion. The legs lift and lower, a mechanical, comforting cycle that requires no decisions, only persistence. 100. The air thins slightly, feeling cleaner, sharper. I maintain the pace. The repetition is a cradle for the mind, rocking it into a state of quiet alert. 200. The trees begin to part, revealing glimpses of the sky, a pale, washed-out blue that promises evening. 300. The breath is deeper now, filling the chest, fueling the steady engine of the climb. The sound of my own breathing is loud and rhythmic, a personal ocean in the ears. 400. The final stretch. The angle softens. The rhythm slows, decelerating gently until the final count arrives. 418. I come to a halt on the viewing platform. The stillness that follows the climb is profound. Below, the town of Ålesund drifts on the water like a collection of scattered jewels. The architecture is a mosaic of pastel yellows, reds, and creams, clustered on the hook-shaped islands that reach out into the Atlantic. From this height, the water of the fjord is a deep, silent navy, holding the islands in a firm embrace. I linger here, letting the heart rate settle, watching the tiny white wakes of fishing boats stitch the islands together. Gravity assists the return, guiding me down a winding path that bypasses the stairs and spills gently onto the streets below. The transition from the high, windy overlook to the sheltered pavement of Skansegata is gradual. The wind dies down, replaced by the stillness of the town center. I find a spot near the pedestrian crossing where the harbor water comes right up to the stone embankment. The sun is beginning its slow descent, casting long, golden shadows across the Art Nouveau facades. This is the time I have been waiting for. The locals call it the quiet hour, but to me, it is the mirror hour. The wind has vanished completely. The surface of the harbor, which was choppy and textured only an hour ago, begins to smooth out. It is a transformation that happens imperceptibly. One moment, there are ripples, the next, there is glass. I lean against the harbor wall, watching the water. Across the narrow channel, a row of turreted buildings stands tall. They are painted in soft hues of apricot, sage, and slate blue. Their rounded towers and intricate ornamentation reflecting the style of a century past. As the water settles, the reflection clarifies. At first, the image in the water is hazy, a trembling impression of the buildings above. But as the minutes pass, the surface tension holds firm. The water stops moving. The reflection sharpens. The apricot turret appears in the depths, inverted but perfect. The slate blue roof joins it. The windows, dark and rectangular, are duplicated with geometric precision. I watch the waterline, the specific point where the gray stone of the foundation meets the dark water. This is the sub-goal. The line. As the sun dips lower, bathing the scene in a twilight glow, the separation vanishes. The stone wall above and the stone wall below fuse into a single, continuous structure. The water is so still it becomes invisible, acting only as a lens. There is no up or down, only a continuous loop of pastel towers and stone foundations, suspended in a void of perfect clarity. The real world and the dream world have touched. The light softens further, turning the sky a dusty violet. The colors on the water deepen, the apricot turning to amber, the sage to emerald. A single street lamp flickers on across the water, and its twin ignites instantly in the depths below. I remain by the rail, breathing in the salt-heavy air, watching the perfect stillness hold the city in its double grasp. The evening settles around the harbor like a heavy, velvet blanket, quieting the last of the day's movement. I let my gaze drift along the horizon where the sea meets the sky, the line there blurring just as the water blurred with the stone, until everything is a soft, seamless gradient of blue. The water in the harbor creates a mirror for the stone city. Turrets and spires, usually so solid against the sky, are now trembling phantoms on the surface of the fjord. I watch them for a long time. The reflection captures the pale yellows and reds of the Art Nouveau facades, mixing them with the deep, cold blue of the water. It is a watercolor painting that dissolves and reforms with every breath of the wind, leaving the stone center behind. The ground beneath my boots changes. The smooth, engineered pavement gives way to the texture of Malavan. This is the street that the fire missed. The air feels different here, heavier with the scent of old timber and tar. The houses are not the tall, ornamented stone castles of the center, but low, wooden structures that huddle together against the coastal drafts. They are painted in muted tones that seem to absorb the quiet afternoon light. I drift along the edge of the road. Above me, the street lamps arch outward on elegant, dark metal necks. They are unlit in the daylight, yet they still command attention. The low sun casts their silhouettes onto the gravel and asphalt below. I trace these ironwork shadows with my eyes. They are intricate loops and curves, black ink spilled onto the gray ground. As the sun dips lower, the shadows stretch, pulling the curling patterns into long, thin fingers that reach across the street. The road curves gently, leading away from the shelter of the wooden houses and toward the open water. Ahead lies the molo, the long stone breakwater that protects the harbor from the mood of the open sea. I step onto the concrete path that runs along the top of the jetty. Here, the world simplifies. There are no more shop windows, no more architectural details, no more shadows of iron vines. There is only the path, the sky, and the water. I settle into a rhythm. My left foot strikes the concrete, then my right. The sound is a dull, flat thud that is immediately swallowed by the vastness of the air. I do not hurry. The path is a straight gray line bisecting the blue. To my left, the water is calm, held still by the wall of stone. To my right, the open fjord breathes against the rocks. One step, the air is cool against my cheeks. Another step, the wind is a constant presence here. Not a gust, but a steady, pressing weight that pushes back against my shoulders. I lean into it slightly. The sensation is grounding. It requires a minute, continuous adjustment of my balance. A conversation between my body and the air. I keep my eyes on the horizon, where the gray of the sea meets the lighter gray of the sky. There is no distinct line, just a soft gradient of vapor. The rhythm of my walking takes over. Step, breath, step, breath. The repetition clears the mind of noise. I focus on the sensation of my heels making contact with the ground. The vibration travels up through the soles of my boots. It is the only solid thing in a world of fluid motion. The sound of the water changes as I move further out. Near the shore, it was a lap and a splash. Here, deep along the jetty, it is a surge. The ocean swells, lifts itself up, and exhales against the base of the breakwater. It is a deep, low frequency that I feel in my chest more than I hear with my ears. I continue this way for a long time, measuring the distance not in meters, but in the number of breaths it takes to reach the end. At the tip of the jetty, the rhythm of walking ceases. The destination stands sharp and bright against the muted background. The Malja lighthouse is small, circular, and painted in a striking red and white. The colors are absolute. The red is the color of a winter berry. The white is the color of fresh milk. In a landscape dominated by slate grays, ocean blues, and weathered timber browns, this lighthouse is a sudden, vivid assertion of presence. I circle the small structure. The paint looks thick, layered over years to withstand the salt spray. I turn back toward the harbor, but I do not return to the street yet. Near the base of the breakwater, a floating structure sits heavily on the water. It is a barge, decked in wide, rough-hewn planks. I move closer to the edge of the quay to listen. This is the sound of weight. The barge rises imperceptibly on a swell, straining against its moorings. The wood releases a low, resonant groan. It is a deep creak, the sound of heavy fibers compressing and releasing. The water slaps the underside of the hollow hull, a wet, percussive thud that echoes inside the timber. I close my eyes to isolate the sound. The creak comes first, a long, dry complaint of the wood. Then the silence. Then the slap of the water. Then the creak again. It is the heartbeat of the harbor, slow and lethargic. The tide is shifting, lifting the heavy platform inch by inch. The sun has gone behind the horizon now, leaving only a bruised purple light in the sky. The red of the lighthouse begins to dim, merging with the shadows of the coming evening. The ironwork shadows on the street have dissolved into the general dusk. I remain by the water, listening to the barge settle into the night, the rhythmic groan marking the passage of time, until there is nothing left but the sound and the dark.